My name's MASSEY from MrFixItDIY.com, and welcome back to another episode of Homeschool. For today's project, I'm going to share with you a few tips that can hopefully help you make your next painting job go a lot smoother. I'm here in my living room today, and what I'm going to be doing is tackling the painting of the ceiling, and then I'm going to be repainting the walls over the next couple days. It may not look like it right now, but in the evenings and at night, the lighting in here is atrocious. And so what I'm going to do today is take you on this journey with me as I tackle this project so that you can hopefully learn some tips and tricks that can hopefully help you make your next painting project go a lot smoother. My first tip is that preparation is everything. In fact, preparation is probably going to take you a lot longer than painting itself, if you're doing it correctly. Preparation makes a world of difference when it comes to painting. And what that means is that you are masking off everything, you're covering things, you're protecting your floors. Remember, especially if you're working overhead, gravity pulls everything down. That means tools, that means overspray, that means paint drips, everything. So you want to make sure that you take the necessary time to do adequate preparation to protect your floors, especially if you're doing it in a home where you're keeping the floors and you're not completely remodeling or replacing the flooring. If you're replacing the flooring, it's not such a big deal. But in this case, I want to protect my hardwood floors. I don't want anything to happen to them. So I'm using some floor protector, which is just basically a cardboard roll, rolling it out over the entire floor and making sure that everything is protected. My next tip is more of a personal preference than anything else, but that is try and minimize plastic. It's probably unrealistic to think that you won't use any plastic, but I try to use it on larger areas and in the largest pieces possible so that I can save them in my paint kit and reuse them for the next time. The more cost efficient and the better way to do things is to rely on reusable materials like drop cloths, tarps, cardboard. That way, even the stuff that you do throw away, it's biodegradable. It's going to break down over time, unlike the plastic, which is just going to add to the immense waste problem we already have. Number 3 is to not be afraid to get the right tools. You're doing this yourself, so that means you are saving money on the labor. That means anything you can do to help the project go smoothly and less painful for you, the better. That means getting the right tools. So in this case, I have a vaulted ceiling and a pretty big room, and I'm just one guy. Rather than me breaking my own back trying to roll this whole thing, I would rather take some of that savings that I saved from doing it myself, investing in the right tools by renting or buying a paint sprayer and spraying this whole thing. Now, if you buy a paint sprayer, you can use it as many times as you want, obviously. You can also just equally rent one. If you don't have space or you don't want to store one or whatever, you can easily rent one from the big box store for a day and knock out your whole project. So my tip is to be kind to yourself. You're already saving money by doing it yourself. The material cost isn't going to change. The labor cost is what you're saving on, and that labor is you. So be kind to yourself and get the right tools. Number 4 is that primer is your friend. Using a quality primer is key for a couple reasons. Number 1, it reduces the amount of paint you'll need on a project, which can save you money. And number 2, it also helps the paint adhere to whatever material you're painting over. In an older home, it can be hard to determine whether an oil or water-based paint was previously used. Using primer can help make sure that there is good adhesion between new paint and older surfaces. Primer is especially helpful when you're painting over a darker color, raw or previously stained wood, or when it's the first coat on new drywall. Number 5, all painter's tapes are not created equal. When you're shopping for materials for your paint project, you'll find a variety of different tapes at the store, and your gut might tell you to just get the cheapest stuff that you can. I encourage you to reach for the green stuff instead of the blue stuff. While I don't really suggest you rely heavily on taping to keep your edges clean, the green stuff does a much better job at preventing paint from getting under the edges of the tape and leaving a mess for you to deal with later. Instead, here's how I like to cut in. First of all, I like to use a 2.5-inch chisel brush to cut in. I also use a smaller cup or container to hold the paint for the brush. Secondly, I never fill the bucket more than a few inches deep. I never like to keep the paint on the brush more than about halfway up the bristles, and not filling the bucket up too much helps you from dipping the brush in too deep. Tap the brush into the bottom of the bucket to fill it with paint, and then wipe off the excess on the sides. With the brush full of paint, I like to start by putting the heel of the brush about an inch away from the cut edge, and then applying pressure, I fan out the chisel edge to reach the edge I'm trying to cut in. Once I hit that edge, I can just drag it up and down and then go back and feather out that area with the side of the brush by a few inches. Occasionally, I'll also use an edge shield if I'm going around something and I don't want to bother taping or taking too much time trying to cut it in by hand. Number 7 is roll in the direction of the roller handle. When you're using a roller, you should roll with the handle of the roller as the leading edge. That's because as you apply pressure, it applies it to that side, and then the other side has diminishing pressure out to the end, which is used to feather out the finish. I like to work about 24 inches at a time, going up and down the wall across the wall. Number 8 is to label your paint cans. If you have any excess paint at the end of a project, make sure you slap a label on it so you know where it goes. I also recommend that you take a picture or write down the name of the paint, so if you need to do any touch-up later and you don't have any extra, you can go to the store and pick up that same paint. Over time, the labels from the store typically fade out and then can be hard to read, and then you'll have to rely on a color match. Number 9, clean your brushes correctly. I've seen people run their brushes underwater like this, running the water directly down the bristles towards the handle. By doing that, what you're doing is washing the paint into the tightly packed fibers at the handle and making it harder to remove the paint. Over time, that will build up and you'll have a brush that's all fanned out at the tip and stiff at the base, which will make it pretty much useless. Instead, I recommend you pick up a brush comb like this one and keep the brush pointed away from you. Let the water run from the base of the bristles off the end of the brush, and using either your hand or the brush comb, wipe the paint away from the handle. The brush comb allows you to get in between the bristles and remove paint you can't see that may be hiding inside. After that, shake the brush out and reuse the packaging that it came in to help keep the shape while stored. If you don't have the packaging, you can still make a little sleeve out of newspaper or a page from a magazine, which leads me to my final tip, and that is reuse your stuff. Brushes aren't the only thing you can reuse over and over if you clean them. If you vacuum your floor protectant well, you can roll that back up and reuse that on the next project, along with your tarps, your drop cloths, your roller heads, and even the large plastic sheets that you hung. I like to keep a couple big tubs of paint supplies so that next time I go to paint something, I don't have to spend as much time and money going to the store to replace all the stuff that I threw away from my last project. So that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and most importantly, I hope that it gave you a few tips that you can take into your next painting project to hopefully make things go a little bit more smooth for you. If you have any comments, questions, or tips of your own that you want to leave in the comments down below, go ahead and do so. Also, be sure to follow me on social media if you aren't already. As always, you can find all of my DIY home improvement and project tutorials on my website at MrFixItDIY.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.